times.
For the headlines.
President Donald Trump says that the elusive Islamic State leader Bakr Al-Baghdadi is killed, dying like a dog in a daring nighttime raid by U.S. Special Forces in northwest Syria.
California's governor declares a statewide emergency as a huge blaze fanned by strong winds forces evacuations and massive power blackouts.
Chilean President Sebastián Piñera ended a state of emergency that lasted more than a week amid mass protests. And UN investigators are headed there to investigate human rights abuses. Our EBC correspondent there, Kevin Cortez, will give us an update.
And the Iglesia Ni Cristo continues to help people who are struggling around the world. We'll hear from our correspondent in Papua New Guinea.
Amalma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The United States and its allies spent years trying to eliminate the leader of ISIS Bakr al-Baghdadi. And finally, they found him in a heavily fortified compound in northern Syria. And now he's dead. Take a look. Now, this is purported to be what's left of that compound after an overnight mission by U.S. Special Forces. They inflicted many casualties as they bombed and blasted their way into Baghdadi's hiding place, according to U.S. President Donald Trump, but took no casualties themselves. President Trump held a news conference to make the announcement. Here's how did he describe the terrorist leader's final moments.
He died after running into a dead-end tunnel, whimpering and crying and screaming all the way. The compound had been cleared by this time, with people either surrendering or being shot and killed. 11 young children were moved out of the house and are uninjured. The only ones remaining were Baghdadi in the tunnel, and he had dragged 3 of his young children with him. They were led to certain death. He reached the end of the tunnel as our dogs chased him down. He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children. His body was mutilated by the blast. The tunnel had caved in on it in addition, but test results gave certain, immediate, and totally positive identification. It was him. The thug who tried so hard to intimidate others spent his last moments in utter fear, in total panic and dread, terrified of the American forces bearing down on him. We were in the compound for approximately 2 hours, and after the mission was accomplished, we took highly sensitive material and information from the raid, much having to do with ISIS, origins, future plans, things that we very much want. Their murder of innocent Americans, James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, Peter Kasich, and Kayla Mueller, were especially heinous. He will never again harm another innocent man, woman, or child. He died like a dog. He died like a coward. The world is now a much safer place.
U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham said following al-Baghdadi's death, at the hands of U.S. Special Forces that President Trump changed the rules of engagement the government uses to fight the Islamic State terror network, and is doing so brought down its leader. Let's listen in.
But the president's been determined for a very long time to bring Baghdadi to justice, and I want to compliment him and his team for bringing about a result that I think is a game changer in the war on terror. The war is by no means over. The caliphate is dead, and the leader of the caliphate is dead, and that's a big deal. The president's determination over time has paid off. We don't give him enough credit for destroying the caliphate. He did this in months, not years, because he changed the rules of engagement. When it comes to what's happening in Syria, I like what I see. We've had the president's position and my position is really not that far off. We really don't need a bunch of Americans in the safe zone. The international community should do that. But some American forces deployed with the SDF to make sure the oil does not ever fall back in the hands of ISIS, and Iran's not the biggest winner, makes a lot of sense.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Twitter, the operation was a turning point in our joint fight against terrorism. But Russia raised doubts the defense ministry does not have reliable information concerning the umpteenth death of Baghdadi. Spokesman Igor Konashenkov said in a statement. Baghdadi's death has been reported several times over the years. President Trump said there was no doubt this time, with a DNA field test confirming his identity.
An official of the Armed Forces of the Philippines said Monday the military would be on high alert to foil possible attempts by terrorist groups attempting to ride on the reported death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr Al-Baghdadi over the weekend. AFP spokesperson Marine Brigadier General Edgardo Arevalo said in a message to reporters, quote, "Our troops in the front lines remain on high alert to thwart possible attempts to ride on this development." Arevalo, however, said the AFP is not anticipating any sympathy attacks in the Philippines from terrorist groups with connections to the ISIS leader or any other ISIS-inspired groups. While the death of the ISIS leader will affect local terrorist groups, Arevalo said this will be not to the point which could lead to the demise of these organizations. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo had the same view. However, he was not sure how this would impact on the terror group's recruits in Mindanao.
Well, as I said, the death of the leader doesn't mean the extinction of that group. But then it may also cause discouragement on the part of the terrorist groups. But as far as we're concerned, whether the leader dies or not, we will secure that part of our country from them.
Mindanao was placed under martial law after the Maute terror group, which had pledged allegiance to ISIS, attacked Marawi City in Lanao del Sur province back in May 23, 2017. Martial law in the southern Philippines will expire on December 31st this year.
Tens of thousands of Lebanese protesters successfully formed a human chain running north-south across the entire country on Sunday to symbolize newfound national unity. Demonstrators joined hands from Tripoli to Tyre, a 170-kilometer chain running through the capital Beirut. Protesters pressed their demands for a complete overhaul of the political system. Prime Minister Saad Hariri on Monday announced a package of economic reforms which aims to revive an economy that has been on the brink of collapse for months. Protesters have been demanding the removal of the entire ruling class, which has remained largely unchanged in 3 decades. Many of the political heavyweights are former warlords, seen as representing little beyond their own sectarian or geographical community. The protesters see them as corrupt and incompetent and have so far dismissed measures proposed by the political leadership to quell the protests.
Going now to Chile, President Sebastián Piñera announced a major government reshuffle the day after more than 1 million people took to the streets for the largest protests in a week of demonstrations. The United Nations, meanwhile, will also send a special mission to investigate human rights abuses there following a week of street protests that left several people dead. Our EBC correspondent Kevin Cortez is following this developing story. Kevin?
Yes, Alma, we're still following the developments here from Chile, and the latest is that President Sebastián Piñera has just sacked his whole cabinet to introduce new reforms as asked by protesters. The president also announced that a curfew imposed in cities across Chile a week ago had been lifted. The state of emergency was also lifted on Monday midnight here in Chile. There have been various reports of human rights violations being investigated by the Chilean National Institute of Human Rights, which includes at least 2 cases of rape and torture. One of the 2 cases involves 4th-year medical student from Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, which according to reports was detained while he was about to apply first aid to injured people in a pillaged supermarket. According to his statement, as released by Chilean press, he was tortured in presence of at least 10 carabineros and was sexually assaulted by 2 officers using a police bat. There have been calls for massive rally throughout the week, which includes protests for this Monday and Tuesday in front of the La Moneda Palace, which is where the president's office is. Reporting from Santiago, Chile, this is Kevin Cortez from Eagle News, and I'm 1 with 25.
2 people were killed as several hundred police and their supporters demonstrated in Haiti's capital for better law enforcement salaries on Sunday, while anti-government marchers also took to the streets. The first victim was shot during a protest demanding that President Jovenel Moise step down. The man who opened fire on the crowd of marchers was beaten to death and then burned by demonstrators. At least 23 people were killed and over 200 wounded in the latest wave of protests, which began in September, calling for Haiti's President Jovenel Moise's resignation and social reforms after reports of government corruption came to light in May.
Meanwhile, students and school children hit the streets of Baghdad in southern Iraq to join the escalating calls for the government to quit and defying the education minister, legal threats, and even their parents. More than 200 people have been killed and 8,000 wounded, the majority protesters since the movement erupted on October 1st. Now this week, Prime Minister Adel Abdelmahdi found himself under pressure from a new source: Iraqi students. Several local syndicates, including lawyers and engineers, also joined the movement with picket lines preventing government workers from reaching their offices. Now, swathes of the country have been engulfed by protests this month, with anger over unemployment and accusations of graft evolving into demands for a total political overhaul.
Police say pepper spray and tear gas after pro-democracy protesters defied authorities to hold a rally on Hong Kong's scenic harbor front, the latest flashpoint in months of political unrest gripping the city. Hong Kong was gripped by another day of petrol bombs and tear gas on Sunday as police and pro-democracy protesters clashed for hours throughout a popular tourist district. Police cleared the unsanctioned rally in a nearby park. Many of the protesters wore masks, defying a recent emergency law banning face coverings, and were heckling officers. but few of those involved in the early clashes had protective helmets and respirators used by more hardcore frontliners. Police said protesters trashed shops and hurled petrol bombs and also set fire to the entrances of subway stations. Meanwhile, thousands joined Hong Kong's medical professionals in a rally calling for a stop to police violence.
And today's assembly is about the medical exam. So as a Chinese medicine practitioner, I think we need to take the notice of the police for the violence and the tear gas and the toxic of tear gas. That can hurt not only the people and the environment.
They also want to have the rights, escape the fear to have the rights to see doctors and the nurse. But every time they go to hospital, they will arrest. So no students and teenagers willing to go to the public hospital.
Tens of thousands of people marched for Spanish unity, staging a counter-rally in Barcelona a day after 350,000 Catalan separatists held a protest over the jailing of 9 regional leaders. Around 80,000 people, according to a police estimate, marched down Barcelona's central Gracia thoroughfare, waving Spanish and Catalan flags and chanting, quote, "That's enough, and the streets belong to everyone," to counter the separatist claim that the streets will always be ours. Catalonia, a wealthy northeastern region that is home to some 7.5 million people, has been bitterly divided as its calls for independence from the central government in Madrid have grown over the past few years. Unrest has gripped the region since an October 14 Spanish Supreme Court verdict handed lengthy jail terms to regional leaders behind a banned 2017 referendum and a short-lived declaration of independence. Sunday's rally was called by the Catalan Civil Society Association, which said it wanted to show that those opposing secession from the rest of Spain comprise a silent majority.
Meanwhile, Ravina Shamdasani, spokesperson of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, commented on the protests and unrest around the world. Watch this.
As you're all aware, current or very recent protests, some of which we will talk about today, include ones taking place in Bolivia, Chile, Hong Kong, Ecuador, Egypt, Guinea, Haiti, Iraq, and Lebanon. And of course, we have also seen major protests taking place earlier in the year in Algeria, Honduras, Nicaragua, Malawi, Russia, Sudan, Zimbabwe, as well as a number of EU countries, including France, Spain, and the UK. And this list is far from exhaustive. There are several others that we have not mentioned here. Of course, the reasons behind these protests are complex and varied, and it is important not to come to sweeping conclusions. There are common threads among many of these protests. Populations that are fed up and angry, especially with socioeconomic conditions, corruption, inequalities, and the general widening gap between the rich and the poor. These sentiments are exacerbated by growing mistrust of institutions of government, politicians, and ruling elites. Some protests have been triggered by one or two specific developments and have metamorphosed into expressions of deep public dissatisfaction on a whole range of issues, spanning the political, social, and economic spectrum. Some have been fanned by poor government responses or by the excessive use of force against the initial protesters, which have then brought tens of thousands more people into the streets in solidarity with those who have been killed, injured, or arrested by security forces, who in many cases have failed to abide by international standards governing the use of force and tried to obstruct fundamental human rights, such as freedoms of peaceful assembly and association and of expression.
Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Huli na MTRs.
Hi, I am Teacher Sally, and this is Kid Kwento, one of Net25 Kids' online shows. Kid Kwento is now on TV. You can watch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 to 4:30 p.m. Also watch Anong Sa Inyo with Ate DJ every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 to 4:30 p.m. Sa Kid Kwento, ang aming motto ay, let's all read to succeed! Hooray! Kita-kita tayo ha! Bye-bye!
Welcome back. California's governor declared a statewide emergency as a huge wind-fueled blaze forced the evacuations and massive power blackouts. It also threatened towns in the famed Sonoma wine region. Take a look.
And I went up there earlier in the morning because I wanted to know where it was coming from, and I could see it. You could see this big smoke and big ball in the sky back there. And I said, oh, I gotta get home. It takes me about 2 minutes to get to my house. And probably within a half hour, or less than that, it was here already.
The so-called Kincaid fire north of San Francisco has already spread to 30,000 acres and was only 10% contained by Sunday evening. The blaze, the largest of more than a dozen wildfires burning throughout the state, has destroyed dozens of homes and wineries, including the iconic Soda Rock Winery built in 1869. An estimated 200,000 people were under mandatory evacuation orders, including in parts of Santa Rosa and a large swath of Sonoma County all the way to the Pacific Ocean. The Sonoma County Sheriff's Office tweeted, quote, "This is the largest evacuation that any of us at the Sheriff's Office can remember. Take care of each other." A fire official meantime warned that should the flames continue spreading west and jump over a major freeway, the 101, and that could prove even more catastrophic, as that region hasn't had any fires since the 1940s. Sonoma County Sheriff Mark Essick told a news conference that hundreds of police officers backed by the National Guard had been deployed in regions under evacuation orders to check property and prevent looting. Several other fires have erupted throughout the state in the last week, fueled by high winds, bone-dry conditions, and temperatures in the 80s and 90s Fahrenheit. One major fire, the Tick Fire, in the southern part of the state, north of Los Angeles, also prompted evacuations and destroyed a number of homes near Santa Clarita. But on Sunday, most evacuation orders were lifted as some 1,000 firefighters worked to contain the fire that burned more than 4,500 acres.
Peronist candidate Alberto Fernandez went to a first-round triumph in Argentina's presidential election Sunday, ousting current President Mauricio Macri. Watch this.
Vamos a volver a construir la Argentina igualitaria y solidaria que todos soñamos. Ese es el compromiso que asumo. Y ojalá que quienes sean nuestros opositores en estos 4 años sean conscientes de lo que nos han dejado y nos ayuden a reconstruir el país de las cenizas que han dejado.
His win caps a remarkable political comeback for his running mate, ex-President Cristina Kirchner, who will be his vice president. The return to power of protectionist Peronists comes amid a lengthy recession and a debt crunch raising market fears of a possible default on a $57 billion IMF loan. The peso fell 5.86% in the week before the elections, and the week ended with the dollar at 65 pesos. Fernandez has insisted his government would not default, but rather seek to renegotiate the terms of the loan and sought to reassure voters that their bank deposits would be safe under his administration. Since Fernandez's crushing victory in August primaries, which made him the favorite for the presidency, Argentine savers have withdrawn around $12 billion from their accounts. Bakr blamed Argentina's economic problems on previous Peronist governments under Kirchner 2007 to 2015 and her late husband Nestor Kirchner 2003-2007.
In other news, Britain has sent documents to Vietnam to help identify some of the 39 people found dead in a truck near London. This is according to Hanoi, as fears mount that most of the dead were Vietnamese. Take a look. The 8 women and 31 men found Wednesday in a refrigerated container in Essex, southeast England, were originally identified as Chinese. But several Vietnamese families have come forward saying they fear their relatives are among the dead. British police have charged the driver of the truck, Maurice Robinson, with 39 counts of manslaughter and conspiracy to traffic people. The 25-year-old from Northern Ireland, who also faces charges of conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration and money laundering, is due to appear in court on Monday. The truck tragedy has plunged communities in central Vietnam into mourning as families desperately wait for news from their missing relatives.
Tức là từ mấy ngày, từ ngày 22 cho đến 23, 24 thì chú cũng có hy vọng là có phép màu nào đó thì là không ập đến với con trai của chú. Nhưng mà từ ngày 25 cho đến nay thì không có một tia hy vọng nào ở chú nữa, mà ruột gan rất là nóng. Đồng thời rất suy nghĩ về con, mà mỗi lần suy nghĩ về con thì bố khóc. Bà gọi là cháu người ta kéo đến thì bố lại càng không kìm nén nổi. Thì mong mà rằng mà coi như là sớm có tin của cháu. Thì cháu cũng nguyện vọng là kinh tế gia đình nó quá khó khăn. Thì cháu cũng muốn đi ra là đi theo bạn bè để đi ra đi làm ăn để kiếm thêm đồng tiền để về là nuôi con. Thì hoàn cảnh kinh tế của gia đình thì là bố thì không có, quá khó khăn. Nên khi cháu ra đi thì là hoàn toàn là vay, bố vay cả. Thì bây giờ con mà hắn chết đi thì cái số nợ của đây lại cháu bố với vợ con hắn thì không biết khi mua và mà trả được. Đấy. Thì bây giờ già rồi làm không được, càng ngày càng yếu, để cổng với nuôi 2 đứa cháu cho hắn nữa thì bây giờ là không biết khi mua mà gia đình mà có điều kiện để mà trả cái nợ đó được.
Now, this father fears his son is among the 39 bodies found Wednesday morning in the UK. British authorities found the victims, believed to be migrants, inside the shipping container in an industrial park in London. Britain, a prime destination for migrants seeking better lives abroad. All the families come from impoverished and remote corners of central Vietnam, a hotspot for people willing to embark on dangerous journeys in the hope of striking it rich abroad. Now, many are smuggled illegally through Russia or China, often owing tens of thousands of dollars to their traffickers and carrying falsified documents. And they end up working off the books on cannabis farms or in nail salons.
Iglesia ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, continues to help people who are struggling around the world. We go to Papua New Guinea, where our EBC correspondent Echo Hortaleza Quinola is at an Aid to Humanity event there. Echo?
Because kindness can't go wrong. This saying was once again proven by the Church of Christ, who held for the end time in Papua New Guinea an Aid for Humanity program. Right after the dedication of the new worship building, the Church of Christ members, headed by the District Minister of Australia West, Brother Romeo Beltran, conducted the giving of goodwill bags to the less fortunate people of Port Moresby, residing in Waigani, Boroko, Badili, Morata, Hohola, Gordons, and Bumana. And on the following day, Beltran, together with the ministerial workers, Regino Manangan Jr., Edmark Velasco, and Decem Bryan Companion, invaded the village of Erima to again distribute goodwill bags to the needy people. Recipients of food parcel were so delighted and extended their utmost gratitude to the Church of Christ members. This humanitarian act, according to Beltran, is also a sense of connection to the Papua New Guineans to make them feel that this church cares for them, not only in their material needs, but most of all in their spiritual welfare. Beltran also said that helping poor people and showing kindness to them is an act of worshiping God. Indeed, kindness can't go wrong.
We show act of kindness to the people of Papua New Guinea, especially Port Moresby. And we give aid to them, giving material things, because it is a commandment of God. Because according to the Bible, that as long as there are poor in the land, we should not stop giving help to the poor. Not only to give them their needs, but according to the Bible, the act of kindness that we are showing to them through our help is not only to give them help, that is also an act of worship to our Lord God. We want to give glory to our Lord God.
Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola, and I am one with 25.
We'll be back with more news right after this break.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN Channel 725, same day as the Philippines.
Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere,
on any mobile device on OSN Play.
I am here at Gastown, which is a National Historic Site in Vancouver, British Columbia. Located in Vancouver's oldest neighborhood is the steam-powered clock, which is Gastown's most famous landmark. Make sure to tune in to Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I am Lou Aquino, EBC correspondent, and I am one with 25.
HSBC's interim chief executive said the banking giant was underperforming in parts of Europe and the United States. Third quarter profits slipped and the lender warned of further headwinds. The Asia-focused BMF has been trying to lower costs as it faces the double uncertainties caused by the grinding U.S.-China trade war and Britain's impending departure from the European Union. Noel Quinn, who took over as acting CEO after the shock ouster in August of John Flint, has overseen plans to axe some 4,000 jobs, primarily away from its more profitable businesses within the Greater China region. But Quinn, who has signaled he wants the top job on a permanent basis, hinted at more pain ahead in the coming months. He said, quote, Our previous plans are no longer sufficient to improve performance for these businesses, given the softer outlook for revenue growth. We are therefore accelerating plans to remodel them and move capital into higher growth and return opportunities. Bloomberg News has reported that the bank may look to partially exit stock trading in some developed Western markets and will attempt to sell its French retail bank.
The International Monetary Fund said unemployment and sluggish economic growth are fueling social tension and popular protests in several Arab countries.
GCC economies need to diversify and grow out of oil, and this requires to accelerate the reform that have been started in the last 4 or 5 years in order to promote investment beyond oil or oil-related sector by increasing access to finance, especially to the SMEs, that will allow those economies to create more jobs, and by becoming less pro-cyclical and reduce the dependence on the oil cycle. The level of growth that countries of the region are having is below what is needed to address the unemployment. We are in a region where the level of unemployment at the youth level exceeds 25 to 30%, and this requires growth to be higher by 1 or 2%.
The unrest is in turn contributing to slower growth in the Middle East and North Africa region, alongside global trade tensions, oil price volatility, and a disorderly Brexit process, the IMF said in a report on the regional economic outlook. In Lebanon, where protesters have brought the country to a standstill with demands for a full overhaul of the political system, the economy grew at a very slow pace over the past few years.
In the last 4 or 5 years, in order to... The Lebanese economy was growing at a very slow pace over the last few years, and Lebanon was facing certain number of imbalances with the increase in budget deficit and the trade balance. And therefore the government has to act firmly and swiftly in order to address those imbalances, bring confidence back by addressing the fiscal situation, lowering expenditure and eliminating waste in the spending, reform some of the key sectors, mainly electricity, telecom.
The IMF said that Iran, which is subject to crippling U.S. sanctions, has entered a steep economic recession and faces a battle against spiraling inflationary pressures. The Islamic Republic's economy is projected to contract by 9.5% this year, after posting negative growth of a 4.8% in 2018.
The level of negative growth in Iran is due to the full impact of the second round of sanctions, and it has been negative for the second year. Of course, it also had the impact on prices. Inflation is expected to exceed 30%, to be around 31%. What Iran needs is to, in fact, reduce the level of inflation and address through realigning the exchange rate to the market rate the second round impact of inflation.
European Union members agreed to postpone Brexit for up to 3 months, stepping in with their decision less than 90 hours before Britain was due to crash out with no divorce deal. The next deadline for departure will be January 31st next year, although the other 27 capitals would allow an earlier date if London ratifies a withdrawal agreement before then. The EU27 has agreed that it will accept the UK's request for a Brexit flex tension until the 31st of January 2020, the President of the European Council representing member states, Donald Tusk, tweeted, "The decision is expected to be formalized through a written procedure," he said, after ambassadors met in Brussels to approve the extension. Later on Monday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was to ask the House of Commons to vote on a snap election, which he wants to hold on December 12, after MPs have had time to ratify his Brexit deal. However, he faces defeat on that move, as with his two previous election calls. He needs the support of 2/3 of the 650 MPs, but doesn't have even a simple majority. The Labour Party dislikes Johnson's Brexit deal and says it will not back an election until his threat of leaving the EU with no deal at all is removed. More than 3 years after Britons voted 52.48% for Brexit in a 2016 referendum, the country and the parliament remain divided.
People standing on Parliament Square in London react as John Bercow, Speaker of the House of Commons, reads out the vote result of the Let Win Amendment. That's 322 to 306, which has the effect of forcing Johnson to ask EU leaders beyond the Brexit, October 31, something he had vowed not to do. Let's take a look at their reactions.
The ayes to the right, 322. 306.
Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Juniver Mahilum West said it is unavoidable that the proposed Code of Conduct in the South China Sea will be brought up in the discussions during the 35th ASEAN Summit to be held in Bangkok, Thailand from November 2 to the 4th. She also said President Duterte would likely renew his push for the completion of the COC for parties in the highly disputed waters, and she goes on to describe the events during the summit. Let's listen in.
I think it will be featured in the discussions. It's unavoidable. Kasi doon sa meeting na yun ng mga leaders, they will have a parang tour of the horizon of what's happening throughout the region. So in all three pillars of cooperation, political, security, economic, and then socio-cultural. So it will be discussed there, and then I think we could expect the countries to give their positions. But as to intensive negotiations, we don't expect that to happen in this meeting, in these kinds of meetings. I wouldn't want to preempt what the President would say, but in terms of looking at the conditions, the situation on the ground or at sea, in the South China Sea, for example, I think the President would be expected to say something about it. Apart from the ASEAN Plenary Summit, there are several other summits where Philippine participation is expected. These include the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and the East Asia Summit, where leaders are expected to share their views regarding regional and international issues affecting our region and beyond. ASEAN will also have one-on-one summits with China, with India, the United Nations, the United States, and Japan, where we are expected to discuss the current direction of our partnerships and cooperation on mutual concerns. There are about 40 anticipated outcome documents at the end of the 35th ASEAN Summit and related summits, which represent the culmination of the ASEAN community's work in pursuit of a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable ASEAN community, particularly given this year's theme of Partnership for Sustainability. There will be a handover ceremony of the chairmanship of ASEAN from Thailand to Vietnam at the closing session on November 12.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. Sports is up next.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Hi, I'm Madeline. And I'm Samantha. And we're the Callion Twins. Please watch Digital Nest on Net 25 every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Digital Nest EBC. Callion Twins signing off.
Tiger Woods held off the challenge of home favorite Hideki Matsuyama to win the weather-delayed Zozo Championship by 3 shots and make golfing history Monday. The 15-time major winner, Woods, finished 19 under par to equal U.S. legend Sam Snead's all-time record of 82 U.S. PGA Tour victories set 54 years ago. Woods, in his first outing since arthroscopic knee surgery 2 months ago, broke into a huge mile after he safely got up and down from a greenside bunker at the 18th of the birdie and 3 under final round of 67. 2019 Masters winner Woods had not won a major since 2008 because of injuries and a loss of form. Now he's up to number 6 in the world rankings.
Now, President Donald Trump was booed by baseball fans as he attended a World Series game with his wife Melania in Washington Sunday. Take a look. President Trump attended the tie-breaking Game 5 of the series on the day his administration announced the death, long sought by the Pentagon, of Islamic State group leader Abu Bakr Al-Baghdadi. After the game's 3rd inning, the stadium's video display showed military members in attendance, but then quickly cut to President Trump. The cheering crowd immediately switched to loud and sustained boos. When the display cut back to the soldiers, the booing died down, but fans soon took up a chorus of "Lock him up," a play on the chant frequently heard at pro-Trump rallies against Hillary Clinton, but now often used against the president.
Canada conquers at the World Indoor Lacrosse Championship. Canada defeated the Iroquois Nationals 1912 for fifth straight time. Anthony Sevilla reports.
Canada claimed their fifth straight gold medal at the World Indoor Lacrosse Championship at the Langley Event Centre, defeating the Iroquois Nationals 19-12. Goals were exchanged throughout the entire game, but Canada pulled ahead 14-8 to end the third and held off a late fourth quarter rally by the Nationals to steal the victory. Canada had 7 different players contributing on the offensive end. Dane Dobie led the team with 10 points, 3 goals and 7 assists, and Curtis Dixon led the team in goals with 5 to go along with his 2 assists. Dixon, who grew up in Port Coquitlam, a short drive from the Langley Event Centre, shared his thoughts on winning in his hometown and how special it was to represent his country.
It's awesome. This is my third World Championship, and it never gets old. It's always a special moment getting to represent your country, and getting to do it, in my backyard is actually special.
The host nation now holds the record for the most titles in the FIL World Indoor Lacrosse Championships since the event was founded in 2003. Despite never claiming gold, the Iroquois Nationals have been dominant at this event every year. They are the only Native American team sanctioned by the International Lacrosse Federation to compete in any sport internationally. Anthony Sevilla, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
And the rivalry between the Clippers and Lakers intensified even more this NBA season, with some of the league's biggest names all playing in the city of Los Angeles. Here's Aljamain Santos for the report.
The return of the regular NBA season started off with the marquee matchup in the West Coast between the new Los Angeles Lakers and the new Los Angeles Clippers. The two franchises share the Staples Center, but the spotlight has always created a purple and gold shadow for the Clippers, who have yet to earn a banner themselves. Celebrities and fans from all over the country have flocked to the Staples Center to witness what some may consider the greatest rival this season.
They'll definitely compete. I mean, they got the top two, pretty much the top two-way players in the game. So they're definitely going to be able to feed off of each other. The game comes naturally. I believe the offseason moves made by both teams, it was almost like a chess move. Like, each one was positioning themselves with, it's like, okay, you got AD, well, go ahead and add a second small forward for you to guard. They didn't really pick up anyone. They, if anything, improved their current player, like Montrezl Harrell. That guy's a dog. He's gonna be up there, and so. But I still feel like with that second acquisition, or that second chance with Dwight, he seems a lot more locked in. So I think he'll be able to neutralize that move as well. So we'll see.
Ever since Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, since the little Lob City movement was over with, it's been kind of rocky. But now, yeah, we're gonna get LeBron there. Look, King who? What? Oh no, it's about to go down, baby. It's about to go down. The conference finals over with. LA Clippers all day, baby. LA Clippers had to find something to do, and they found a solution. So now we back, baby. We made some good decisions. We got number 13, so we picked them up, and then we got the clock. So it's about to make some moves, baby. About to make some moves. LA, they in trouble either way it goes, but more so because of the Clippers.
The Clippers' offseason decisions tonight proved to be in their favor, since the acquisition of superstars Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, a new slate headed by the experience and strategy of head coach Doc Rivers. Players shared their insight on their team's performance following the matchup.
It's the first game. I didn't play too much of training camp, just for try to get me healthy, but it's just going to take time, arguments, miscues. Just the first game of the season, so it's going to take the season and, mistakes and, success to get us on the same page.
Because it was in our scouting report. It's something that we said we made a big emphasis on, and we made sure to limit on the one-touch shot, get the rebound, and go the other way. We made a big emphasis on that all week long, and the guards did a tremendous job on it, on coming over the back and helping us rebound and sandwich rebound, and it played a big part of our win tonight.
The landscape of the league has a new look. The powerhouses have shifted league-wide, and with all the off-season movements, new class of rookies, there may be more than a city rival to worry about for both teams. From the Staples Center in Los Angeles, I am Aljamain Santos for Eagle News, always 1 with 25.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles and
we're one with 25.